Yeah, hi, good evening. This is Gurpreet this side, and it's late hours of night. And I've just studied chapter 5, that is written by H.G. Wells. That's written by H.G. Wells, and the story name is The Invisible Man. And the story, The Invisible Man, um, we're going to study about a scientist who is invisible, who has taken a drug, and the drug has made him invisible. Now he's experimenting on his body. That can he live by becoming invisible. And now, almost, his experiment was a hit. He took a drug, a pill, to make himself invisible, and the air could pass through his body and made his body a sheet of glass, which is transparent, totally transparent, and a person can see through it. And last but not least, the moment he experimented this, it was a chilled winter of London. And in London, the winters are very cold, they're very chilled. And in, in, in that time of cold winter, chilled winter, the scientist, he decided move out of his house as he had a fight with his landlord. His landlord was a very calm person, but he always had a fight with him for money, for rent. Now, as he was not getting rent from his landlord, from Griffin, the scientist, on time, so he became very much what do you call that? Very much agitated, irritated from that person that he was not giving the rent on time. So he decided to kick him out of the house, and he gave me a warning that you have to leave the house, you have to vacate the house. Now, after this, he wanted to take a revenge from him, and in anger, he took that pill, he became invisible, and he put the house of the landlord on fire, and he went out. The moment he stepped out of the house, he removed his shoes, he removed his clothes, and he became totally naked. That is the one and the only condition to become invisible after taking the pill. So he became invisible, and when he became invisible, he stepped out of the house. He left the footprints on the mud. Now, when he left the footprints on the mud, he realized that he is leaving the footprints, and there were two little boys who were following him. And while they were following him, they noticed that pair of feet, they are ahead him, and they are ahead him, and they were following those feet, footsteps, and they were playing also. And he, after going far away, little far away, he felt a lot of cold, chilled winter in his bones, in his body, in his breath, and he became restless. He wanted to eat something, he wanted warmth, and he went and he sheepishly, very because he was invisible, he was waiting for the malls to be closed, and the moment the malls were closed, he went inside. And he went as the air could pass through the body. He was invisible. He can cross the doors. He can cross the walls. So he crossed the doors. He went inside the mall, and he had some warm clothes. He had the warmth of the mall. Then he had the he went to the restaurant of the kitchen, and he had some cold meat and coffee. After having warm clothes, and after eating from the kitchen restaurant, he went to a theater company. He went to a theater company, and from the theater company, he wore bandage. He wore a false nose. He wore bandage on all over his face. He wore a false nose. Wore a hat. He wore clothes on his body, and which could fit his body from shoulders, from head to toe. And he just wanted to vacate London. He wanted to leave London. Now, the moment he left the London, The moment he left London, mm, he wanted to leave London because he had committed a crime. And after committing a crime, he wanted to leave that place. He was not feeling good about that place. So he took a train and he went to a village named as Iping. And in that village, Iping, he took a shelter in an inn. Now, in an inn, he rented two rooms. He had and rented two rooms. Those two rooms were hired by him. His landlord and landlady's name was Mr. and Mrs. Halls. Mr. and Mrs. Halls, they were very much interested in the rent, and they were finding it weird that in the cold, chilled winter, how could a person could leave the warmth of the house and come to a far off place in strangers and live alone. It was very weird for him. So they adjusted. When he said that he's a scientist, he has come for work and he does not want to be disturbed by anyone. So when he said he does not want to be disturbed by anyone, he he was hired. He was given those two rooms in that inn, but he put a condition that nobody would enter his room without permission. Nobody would enter his house without permission, and he put a condition that he would not be disturbed at all. And Mr. and Mrs. Hall agreed to it because they wanted the rent in advance. He paid in advance because already he had stolen the money from a shopkeeper by hitting him very hard before coming to Iping village. He stole this money at a shopkeeper's place in London only. And after stealing the money, he took a train and went to Iping village. Now he paid that money as an advance rent to Mr. and Mrs. Halls. Mr. and Mrs. Halls, and then he went away with the then he hired that place and he lived at that place. He started experimenting with the drug. In the daytime he used to hide himself inside the rooms, wearing that bandage and all those stuff that he hired from London. And he never allowed anybody to come into his room, not even the landlord and the landlady. And if he was served food by them for eating food. He used to come out but and took the food and go went inside the room and never allowed them to come inside with him and have a chat with him. He never he was not a social friendly people kind of person. He was not social person. He was not a friendly person. He was very secluded, very quiet person. So and there was a history behind that. His childhood was a traumatic childhood. His childhood was not good. His parents were very poor. He had gone through a lot of poverty. And when a person is going through a lot of poverty, a lot of loneliness, and a lot of negativity always come inside out because the wishes are not getting fulfilled. Now, when the wishes are not getting fulfilled, that brings negativity into your life. That brings negative thoughts to your life, to that to those years which he spent in that poverty, in that childhood. And in that childhood, one more traumatic thing happened with him, which was tragic that his father committed suicide when he was very much young. The reason is not mentioned why he committed suicide, but he committed suicide. And when he committed suicide, H.G. Wells wrote that Griffin was very small. He started studying very hard and he doesn't want to die. After studying a lot, he became a scientist and but he doesn't have friends. He doesn't have family. He was a lone person. So he chose something very negative and very weird in his life to destroy another nation, to destroy another people, and to destroy another people, to destroy another nation. What did he do? He um, experimented and invented a drug to become invisible. And becoming invisible, after becoming invisible, he can steal, he can cheat on people, he can take little revenges from the people which he had himself gone through when he was a child. So he wanted to take out that grudge on another people that yes, I've gone through this. Now I'll made you suffer this. So this is the little background and the psychological factors of this person, Griffin, behind the weirdness and his weird behavior. He was psychologically weird person. So this was the main reason that why he was creating such a fuss in his life also, in another people's lives also. So after so he started experimenting with himself. He used to take the drugs, become invisible, and then go to the village people, visit them, like a thief, steal their money, hit them hard, and this is how he was living, and this is how he was paying his rent in that inn also. So in short, he was a thief and dangerous too because he was hitting people. He had started hitting people for money and for stealing clothes. Now, after stealing, there's an incident. Once, very in the early in the morning, 3 or 4 o'clock, he went to a priest house. The priest and his wife were sleeping. They heard a chinkling of the coins, the voice of the coins, that the coins were falling down on the floor and the table, and there was someone in the study. Now, that chinkling of the coins, that money was housekeeping money. The priest went downstairs, and when Griffin he heard that voice of steps that somebody was coming downstairs to get hold of him, he took the coins and he ran out of the door, out of the window, and he ran out of the garden also. The priest and his wife, when they came inside, they were shocked and they were petrified. They were afraid because they could not understand that a person who is not visible, how can that person steal money? So the ghost stories were attached with him, with his weird behavior also. People used to find him very weird, and people used to find him very secluded person and not a lucky person, not a good omen person. They considered that the whatever mishappenings are happening in this little small village, they started when this man entered this inn and hired the room. And they were not liking that scientist. Nobody was liking that scientist who was living in that room. So after this happening, he was bewildered, he was himself shocked, not in a good mood, and he was afraid and he was in anger. He was coming back to his room at 5 o'clock or maybe 6 o'clock early in the morning, and till that time, his landlord and landlady they were awake and they saw that the door of the room was open. Now the door of the room was open, and just thought, why not to visit him? Why not to talk with him early in the morning? So they went inside. They hoped that he would be inside the room, but they found him that absent. He was not there. They found that the sheets were very cold. They were not warm. The slippers were there. The shoes were there. His head, face mask, his dark glasses, his hat, his clothes, everything was there. And it was there, and they judged that the quilt and the bed was very cold. That means he was out in the garden, he was out in the forest, in the village for a walk, maybe, and it had taken a long, quite while. I mean, there was some maybe more than half an hour, or maybe more than an hour. The room was very much cold. At the moment the landlady touched his head, Griffin had, till that time, Griffin had entered the room. He was invisible. The landlord and landlady could not see him. The moment he touched the hat flew up in the air, and that hat was hit. She was hit by that hat. That hat came uh, all over her face, very hard on its own, which means Griffin attacked her, and he was taking advantage of the ghost stories that was spreading in the village. that there are ghosts in the village. They're disturbing people, they're hitting people, they're stealing money, they're stealing clothes, they're stealing food. So he took the advantage of these ghost stories. He hit the hat on a landlady's face. Then the landlord came forward to save her. During that time, the furniture, the chair, wooden chair in the room, it flew up in the air. When it flew up in the air, it whirled round on its own, and the chair pushed both husband and wife out of that room very, very forcibly, and the door was shut on its own. Now, both husband and wife, the landlord and the landlady, they were very much in anger. They were very much in petrif- they were petrified. They were terrified, and they were in anger that when they entered Griffin's room, it happened with them. That means there is a ghost, or maybe this weird man is doing something which we don't understand, or he wanted to kill us. Now they complained against this man that we want to chuck out this tenant from our inn and he is not leaving and vacating the place. So they called the police and constable in the morning. The constable name was Mr. Jaffers. Mr. Jaffer, sorry, in the evening. And in the evening, Mr. Jaffer came and he just checked out his whereabouts, his room, his way of talking, his way of wearing the clothes. Now, Mr. Jeffers find out that he is a thief. He is hiding his face behind this bandage. He removed his glasses and wanted to remove, and the moment he wanted to remove his bandage, he was hit very hard by Griffin. When he hit hard on the police, Griffin, he started running away from that situation, from the people, because the people were around him. They wanted to catch hold of him. Griffin started taking out his clothes and he was running. And at that time, the people of that village, they realized that this man was not a ghost. He was an invisible but living man. He was living. He was not dead. After that, Griffin met his friend on the way, and somehow they talked about their lives and their goals. While talking about their life and their goals, Griffin told his friend that he has invented a drug which could make a man invisible and then he can do anything, whatever he wanted. His friend asked him what he wanted to do exactly. He abruptly, suddenly told him his very nasty plan. His nasty plan was very much destructive. He told him that he is going to use this drug against England to destroy the nation, to destroy England. And he would sell this drug to the England, the scientist of England, or to the anti-social people of the England. And then he could spread this drug and he could become very rich. Now, this plan was very nasty and destructive. His friend was very wise. He saw that it could bring destruction to humanity, to uh, humankind, to the world, to the nation, and it should be stopped there and then. So his friend killed him, and at the end, Griffin was killed. So Griffin could have used his ability in a positive way, in a very sacred way also, but he used his power in a negative way. And when we use a power in a negative way, we always get cut, or we always get a punishment or a penalty in result. So in the end, he got death as a penalty. He died and he was killed basically. And he was killed because his plans were not good. So the summary is about a eccentric, psychotic scientist who wanted to ruin, he wanted to destroy the nations, the humankind, the world, the and the society which belonged to him. He was not useful to society, but he was destructive to society. So any human being who is destructive to society is not liked by anyone, is not respected by anyone. This is the moral of this chapter. So from here, I'll stop the class. This is for today. I'll make this video in Hindi also by tomorrow. So if you have any queries or any questions related to it, there's a drop box. You can drop it there. I'll answer them. And if you want to ask any word meaning, you can send it to me. I can write it on it. Thank you for this class.